Asia, continent of countries with diverse challenges in trade. The region boasts states with tremendous levels of human development as well as least developed states. These countries show extreme diversity in terms of human development, population, size, political systems, culture, religion, and ecology. For this reason, international trade exists in a dimension filled with success and progress. As the world becomes more globalized and comes together through trade, it is vital for everyone to understand the significance of international trade and what is the best way to comprehend complex and complicated subjects, but through understanding their basics. Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelt as we take you for an enlightening ride in the next couple of minutes. We hope that through this webinar, you will be able to learn new things about the topics that will be discussed later on. So without much further ado, welcome and enjoy.
Okay, hello and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to our SEM Enter webinar. I am Carlo, one of your hosts, and this afternoon we will be talking about two of the most prominent international trade policies, right, Nicole?
That's right, Carlo. This afternoon, we will be joining by two groups and their team captain that will help us understand the meaning and importance of these policies in international trade.
Yes, indeed. And so, what I'm waiting for, I think it's time for us to start and not to waste any more time. So, welcome to our participants. Good afternoon. This is Trade Off.
SM and their webinar for ISA 70. So now, to start off this webinar, we are now going to introduce our panelists for this webinar. The panelists are divided into two groups depending on the policy they chose, and each team will be led by a team captain. So now for our first group, led by Michelle Atas, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Team Protectionism Policy.
Afternoon, we are the protectionism policy.
And for our second group of panelists, led by Florence Tabao, please welcome the Team Free Trade Policy.
Good afternoon. I'm Florence Taval from the team of Free Trade Policy.
So hello to everyone, hello to our team leaders. So, okay, obviously our topic for this webinar is all about protectionism and free trade policy. And with the help of our team leaders and their members, they will try their best to explain what are these policies all about.
Yes, Carlo. In addition to that, the teams will be given the chance to define their policy in order for us to understand easily these concepts and ideas. And to start the discussion, we are now going to ask our team leaders about the word association. To start, may I call on the team leader of protectionism policy?
Hi.
Hello, good afternoon, Michelle.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so Michelle, I have a question for you. Whenever you talk about protectionism, what words come to your mind instantly that you can associate with the policy?
So the word that always come to my mind whenever I hear or read about the protectionism policy is the word protecting domestic industry. So that is the word that I can associate with this policy.
That is very interesting. Thank you, Michelle. And I know you can share more things about protectionism later on. So for the next team, Carlo.
Thank you, Nicole. So now I would like to call Florence, the team leader of Free Trade Policy. So hi, Flo. Good afternoon.
Hi, Carlo. Good afternoon.
Hello. So, okay, so Flo, same question. When you say free trade policy, what words or word come or comes to your mind?
When I hear the word free trade policy, the words that come into my mind is open market.
Okay, Flo. So that is a very quick answer, but I guess I know that there will be a further explanation for that. And so now let us proceed to the explanation of each team about their policy because the objective of this webinar is to explain to us the basics of this policy. So in this part, each team will be given enough time in order for them to give the key concepts of their respective policies. They must be able to explain and discuss everything that is important on addressing their policy. So now, the first team that will take the spotlight will be the team of Lawrence. So, Team Free Trade, how are you going to explain to us what is free trade policy?
So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Raven Sinsay from Team Free Trade Policy, and I am here to tell you some information about free trade policy. So, free trade is a largely theoretical policy under which government imposed absolutely no tariffs, taxes, or duties on imports or quotas on exports. Free trade, also called laissez-faire, an economic philosophy of free market capitalism that opposes government intervention or a policy by which a government does not discriminate against imports or interfere with exports by applying tariffs to imports or subsidies to exports. Free trade is the opposite of protectionism, a defensive trade policy intended to eliminate the possibility of foreign competition. So for another information, here is Ms. Sergas to explain.
Good afternoon, everyone. In addition to what Raven said earlier, free trade can help nations develop the best economic policies for their citizens. Also, companies willing to meet consumer demand for various items will look for the cheapest resources or goods to increase supply. So in addition, nations engaging in free trade allow companies to import resources or goods from international countries with no government restrictions or tariffs. So also, governments placing restrictions or tariffs on imported goods often increase the company's cost of doing business in the domestic economic market. So in addition, Buhay will explain the other definition for free trade policy.
In continuation, free trade nations can increase the quality of life for their citizens when engaging in free trade. Free trade allows the lowest price goods to enter the market. Low consumer prices usually help individuals increase their purchasing power. Higher purchasing power allows individuals to purchase more consumer goods with fewer dollars. Not only does this increase an individual's quality of life, it also generates higher national economic growth through increased consumer purchases. Next is Ms. Rupido.
So in addition, free trade can help nations to improve job opportunities in the economic market. Companies allowed to maximize a nation's natural economic resources can develop a comparative advantage when producing consumer goods. This comparative advantage usually allows companies to offer higher employee wage, since few nations or companies are able to reproduce the specific goods. The inability of nations or companies to create substitute goods in the marketplace allow companies to charge higher consumer price and increase gross profit. And that's all for the definition of foreign trade. Thank you.
Thank you for that informative discussion, Team Free Trade Policy. So now, obviously, for the Team Protectionism Policy, how are you going to explain and expound what is protectionism policy?
Um, Good afternoon, everyone. What is protectionism? Protectionism is a policy of protecting domestic industries against foreign competition by means of tariffs, subsidies, import quotas, or other restrictions, or handicaps placed on the imports of foreign competitors. The objective of trade protectionism is to protect a nation's vital economic interests such as keys, industries, commodities, and employment of workers. Next, Miss Alubog.
In addition to what Mr. Tangin said, protectionism refers to government policies that restrict international trade to help domestic industries. Protectionist policies typically seek to improve economic activity, but may also be the result of safety or quality concerns. Next, please.
There are different forms of protectionism. First is the selective protectionism, second is industrial protectionism, and last one is the collective protectionism. There are Asian countries that applied this policy. Example is China, India, and other developing countries like Philippines, Indonesia, and Myanmar. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Team Protectionism. So that's a lot to take, and fortunately, you were able to explain to us clearly what is protectionism, and likewise to the praise team. So now, since we already know what is protectionism and free trade, I think it's also important to know how these policies work in real life. You know, the real life application in international trade. That is why, for the next question, what contemporary issue or trade issue or subject reflects protectionism and free trade policy? And the first team that will answer this will be the team free trade policy. So guys, take a virtual stage.
Good afternoon. I am Angel and we are here to present our contemporary issue for free trade policy. It is about COVID-19 health crisis. We will determine how free trade should work during this pandemic. Trade is essential to save lives and livelihoods. And international cooperation is needed to keep trade flowing. In the midst of significant uncertainty, there are four things we can do. First is to boost confidence in trade and global markets by improving transparency about trade-related policy action and intentions. Second, keep supply chains flowing, especially for essential such as health supplies and food. Third, avoid making things worse through unnecessary export restrictions and other trade barriers. And lastly, even in the midst of the crisis, think beyond the immediate. Next is Miss Vina.
Thank you, Angel. First, boost confidence in trade and global markets by improving transparency. A strong, shared, transparent information base is critical in underpinning sound national policy responses and the international cooperation to keep trade flowing. It will be critical that countries honor their commitments to notify trade-related measures taken in response to COVID-19 to the World Trade Organization or WTO. Your turn, Reese.
Number two, which is keep global supply chains going, especially for essentials. An important priority is keeping the key supply chains for essential goods in this crisis. One best example of it is the China surgical mask. China is known as the main manufacturer of surgical masks, about one half of world capacity. In this kind of emergency crisis, they don't put tariffs on their surgical masks to reach the other states easily. Keeping trade in essential medical supplies flowing means removing barriers such as tariffs, and that's how free trade policy works in this situation. Next is Miss Glenda.
So for the avoid making things worse through unnecessary export restriction and other trade barriers, additional cost of firms is not the time to impose, including through unnecessary policy, uncertainty on demands regarding the duration and severity of COVID-19, and it would be for the government to impose new tariffs and trade restrictive measures. And for the conclusion, here is RJ.
So all in all, free trade policy creates an opportunity to countries to not just be rivals but also to work together, because it's not just the goods that have free movement but also information about different things. So, and regarding about the case of COVID-19, it is a great example where states could be working together in the future whenever there is a similar case that will happen. Free trade is undoubtedly a huge help for participating countries.
Thank you guys. So now for the next team, please take the virtual stage.
So good afternoon everyone. My name is Marina Bautista from Protectionism Policy Team.
So one of the contemporary issue that involves protectionism policy was India tariff treatment on certain goods. This issue is all about ICT goods and tariffs being imposed to these goods. The complainant of this trade issue was Japan, and as a respondent is the India. The complainant has involved third parties, which is the Brazil, China, Chinese Taipei, European Union, Indonesia, Norway, Pakistan, Russian Federation, Singapore, Korea, Republic of Thailand, Turkey, Ukraine, United Kingdom, and the United States. The agreement cited in this article is the Article 21A and 21B of the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade of 1994. So, Article 2 is entitled as the Schedule Concessions, meaning that in both parties it should have no less favorable treatment in accordance to its agreement, and if ever there is an exemption to it should be under legislation of terms and conditions. So next is Miss Bea.
So India's government continued the adjustments of rates to different indirect taxes. This is to support the policies seeking to promote more domestic production and value additions. So the announcement of Make in India campaign make them to continuously raise import duties on a wide range of productions in various sectors such electronic system, mining, automobiles, renewable energy, defense manufacturing, foods, and also textile and garments. So this was already implemented by the India's government. This request
Thank you.
consultation addresses some of the tariff treatments, excess of bound rates, and of substantial interest to Japan. Next is Shagan.
So good afternoon. I will enumerate the goods or ICT goods, which is identification of measures at issues. The ICT goods involved in this is telephones for cellular networks or for wireless networks, base stations, machines for the receptions, conventions, and transmissions, or regeneration of voice, images, or other data, including switching routing apparatus, in which India imposed 20 to 10% duty or tariff in this, violating the Custom Act and Custom Tariff Act of 1995 and 1975, including the first schedule, in which they should have not include tariff on ICT goods or zero bound rate. So next is Ms. Michelle Atas.
So the legal basis of Japan in this request for consultation is the inconsistency of India's obligation under Article 2, 1A and B of the General Agreement on Tariffs in 1994, and this case is still ongoing. So we can deduce from the in analysis, we can deduce from the information provided by the discussants that India imposes tariffs on certain goods, namely ICT goods, to protect its domestic industry in accordance with their Make in India campaign, which aims to utilize the existing India talent base and create additional employment opportunities in the country, and which focuses on 25 sectors, the majority of which are ICT goods. And we believe that this act of India is in the form of industrial protectionism, since they focus on safeguarding particular domestic industries such as the ICT sector, which affects and concern Japan and other major exporters of this commodity. So that is the issue that we think shows or reflect protectionism policy. Thank you.
Okay, very well said, everyone. So, as of now, we have already learned the basic concepts of free trade and protectionism through the help of our panelists. And also, they were able to explain to us how these policies exist in the real world beyond definitions.
That is right, Nicole. So now, before we continue and go deeper with our topics, I guess we should play a game first. Just to recall the past lessons that we have already discussed and learned from this subject, which is international trade in Asia. So, and with this, So the next part is we're going to have a short quiz bee using the Kahoot X application.
So for the mechanics of the game, the host will ask questions to the teams and whoever gets the right answer will get a point. And whoever team gets the highest point and rank will win the game. So good luck and let's start.
Okay, so now let's start our game. So for the first question, so good luck to the teams. First question, it is a government policy that governs international trade. And the answer is international trade policy, and everyone got the right answer.
So for the next question is, under the approaches to the regulations of international trade policy, which implementation of trade policy measures agree between trading partners? And the answer is undertaking of bilateral agreements.
For the third question, if this is a form of protectionism that is directed against some countries or some commodities. So this is actually who answers first, okay? So it doesn't matter if everyone got the right answer because it's all about the speed of answering the question. And everyone again got the right answer, selective protectionism. And the leading team is, as of now, is free trade. Okay, so for the third question,
So for our fourth question, this is a type of trade barrier being imposed by a government that acts as a tax on imports. And the answer is tariff. And free trade is still on the lead.
and for the last question, this happens when the exploiting producer sells goods below the cost of production. What do you call this? And the answer is dumping. And the winner team, Nicole.
On the third place is the protectionism, and second place is the free trade. But our leading team or the winner is free trade. Congratulations, free trade.
So congratulations to the winning team of our team. And unfortunately, you won't be getting any prize since we are out of budget. And but the most important thing is that we all had fun, and we were able to recall the lessons that we have already learned from this subject. So now let's proceed to the next part of our webinar. To continue our discussion about free trade and protectionism, we are now going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each policy. Because of course, everything has its good and downsides, right? So for Team Free Trade, as the first team to answer this question, what makes your policy better compared to protectionism in terms of its advantages, and what are the challenges that are currently facing by free trade policy?
Hi, I'm Michelle Larosa from the Team Free Trade. So I will be highlighting two advantages of the free trade. First is it creates economic growth opportunities. Free trade gives the businesses a platform for their business, and then provides choices for consumers. And then it also benefits the economy through the tariffs or the taxes on imports, and also the promotion of the local made products in the international market. The second one is the opportunities for foreign direct investments. Of course, our home country cannot provide all the ideas that we want on investing our money. So um, free trade provide investors a wide range of choices to where their money will be going. And also, it is a win-win situation wherein investors benefit through profits, and company benefits through the investments into growing their full potential, providing high quality products in reasonable prices. And that's all for my part. Miss Nina will discuss the next. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Nina Jokno from Team Free Trade, and the other advantages of free trade policy are fourth, higher earnings of the factors of production. Free trade increases the earnings of all the factors as they are engaged in the production of those goods in which the country has comparative advantage. Fifth is increase in world production and world consumption. Free trade increases the world production and the world consumption of the internationally traded goods as every trading country produces only the selected goods at lower cost. And next is Anna.
In addition to advantages of free trade policy is links with other countries. International trade and commercial relations often lead to interchange of knowledge, ideas, and cultures between nations. This often produces a better understanding among those countries and lead to amity, and truly reduces the possibility of commercial rivalry and war. Next is the higher earning of the factors of production. Free trade increases the earnings of all the factors as they are engaged in the production of those goods in which the country has comparative advantage. It would increase the productivity of each factor. And for the last advantage is the benefits to consumers. On account of free trade, the consumers on the different countries get the best quality of foreign goods, often a wider range of choice at low prices. And that's all for the advantages of free trade policy, and the disadvantages will be discussed by Miss Bicedo and Miss Lirios.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. I am Eliza and I will tackle some disadvantages of free trade. First is the theft of intellectual property. Inventions are not protected by law in many developing countries. They do have laws, but they are not always severely enforced. So as a result, the ideas of businesses are frequently stolen. For the second one is the poor working conditions. Without sufficient labor protections, multinational corporations may outsource jobs to emerging market countries. So as a result, people are frequently forced to work in hazardous workplace environments. Rika?
So good afternoon. Other disadvantages of free trade policy includes the destruction of native cultures wherein the indigenous traditions may be eliminated if the development pushes into remote locations. Locals have been uprooted, and when the resources are poisoned, many people become sick or die. And the other one is the import of expensive harmful goods when a country can also import high-priced and perhaps damaging foreign goods. Since free trade has less restrictions, it is easier to import harmful goods in a country. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So now, Team Protectionism, please present your answer.
So good afternoon. I am Marian Sama from the group of protectionism policy. One of the advantage of protectionism policy is it allows more jobs. A government can recruit additional enterprises in a given industry by boosting the local price of a good. This increases the likelihood of workers finding work in this industry
and hence benefiting from the accompanying rents. So, because the market for foreign is so limited, the demand for domestic production will higher, which means an increase in the workforce is needed, thus creating a tremendous opportunity for local workers to have a job, which will in turn boost domestic production. So next, Laika.
So, thank you. Next advantage is to protect infant industries. Barriers to trade can be used to protect sunrise industries, also known as infant industries. So, such as those involving new technologies. This gives new firms the chance to develop, grow, and to become a globally competitive. Protection of domestic industries may allow they to develop a comparative advantage. So for more advantages, next year is for Belen.
If a country is trying to grow strong in a new industry, tariffs will protect it from foreign competitors. That gives the new industry companies to develop their competitive advantage. Protectionism temporarily creates jobs for domestic workers. The protection of tariffs, quotas, or subsidies allow domestic companies to hire locally. This benefit ends once the other countries retaliate by erecting protectionism. Next is yourself for the disadvantage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rosal Varela, and I will be discussing one of the disadvantages of protectionism. First, infant industries may never grow up. The protection of an infant industry may actually end up costing a government significant amount of money and financial resources in order to protect its infant industry. This may actually promote inefficiencies by the infant industry and have no incentive to make it efficient, intelligent, long-term investment by borrowing funds or issuing common stock from the domestic international capital markets. This type of protectionism may hinder the growing pains and maturation process that are vital for an infant industry to experience in the short and long term if it is to be successful and competitive in global markets and eventually have a comparative advantage. Next is Miss Jenny and Monica.
So for the other disadvantages is higher prices. Whether tariffs, quotas, exchange rate controls, or regulations are used, they can all affect the final price of a product. Tariffs are the most obvious because a tax is imposed on imported goods. These are paid for largely by the consumer as importers pass on the majority of this cost. And that's it for the advantages and disadvantages of protectionism. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to both of our teams. Now, everything seems clearer on how both policies work and exist in international trade. We are now aware of what makes one better than the other one and vice versa.
Yes, indeed, Nicole, that is right. And obviously, our teams really did a good job on explaining to us everything we need to know about their respective policies. And since we are now near the end of our webinar, our teams believe that we cannot end this webinar without fun.
That's right, Carlo, and I've heard that our teams will show us their TikTok talent. So, everyone, please enjoy the following videos created by our teams. Enjoy!
Hey, can I ask if you know about free trade policy?
Hey,
Yes, sure. Free trade Yes, thanks to you.
Okay, thank you, Team Protectionism. That was very funny. Enjoy, we enjoyed that video. So next, for the next team, the TikTok entry of Team Free Trade. So thank you guys to our both teams for those entertaining videos. So now, Nicole.
That was very cute and informative. Thank you, Team Protectionism and Free Trade, for that very creative and informative video. So now, to end our webinar, may we call on once again, for the last time, our team leaders to give their concluding remarks.
Um, Thank you, Nicole. In this webinar, our team has discussed what is free trade and the advantage and disadvantages of it. Also, the contemporary issues related to it, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. In sum, free trade is a policy in which a government does not discriminate against imports or interfere with exports by applying tariffs or subsidies. Under a free trade policy, goods and services can be bought and sold across international borders with little or no government tariffs, quotas, subsidies, or prohibitions to inhibit their exchange. Moreover, this agreement helped address behind-the-border barriers that would otherwise impede the flow of goods and services, encourage investment, and improve the rules affecting such issues as intellectual property, e-commerce, and government procurement. That's all. Thank you. Michelle.
So, this webinar has provided us with a wealth of information and insight into international policy, namely free trade and protectionism. To summarize our team's discussions of protectionism, it is a policy of protecting domestic industries or restricting imports from other countries by methods such as tariff on imported goods, import quotas, and a number of other government's regulations. Furthermore, in this policy, like any other policies, has benefits and disadvantages, and both policies are essential to a country's economy. Given the reason presented by both teams, we can conclude that free trade is a policy that helps to expand the size of the economy of a country as a whole, but as a country becomes more industrial in economy, traditional domestic industries may decrease or decline, which is a situation that protectionism policy strives to avoid, for it aims to protect its domestic industry. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so well, I guess that concludes our webinar for this afternoon. And we hope that despite everything that is happening around us, everyone who is watching this video, there is something new from our teams of panelists.
Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you are all in good places right now. Once again, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Carlo, and this is Trade Off.
SM and their webinar for ISIS 70.